Yeah, I saw we've been friends like 7 years now. Facebook
That's
felt the need to tell me this.
just freaking terrifying.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 469 of the Dead Robot Society. Can you hear me now?
No, I
Your
can't.
audio is sounding so much better today, Paul.
Shut up. Shut up. Did I sound like crap last week? I sounded like crap last week.
I actually didn't hear anything. I heard you talking about you thinking you sounded like crap. I thought you sounded fine.
Yeah. You didn't edit the episode. And now today I'm on the real microphone. I'm on the big boy mic. Today's episode, that will be rather ironic since we talk about audiobook production, and one of the gotchas I should have put in there is always make sure your equipment is doing what it's supposed to be doing.
You know, I think that's a wonderful lesson to bring to this, and it only makes it sweeter. Seriously.
Oh God. Yeah. Well, today's episode, it's going to be rather ironic. Too much irony.
Well, irony is your life, Paul. Tell us about your life. What's going on? What writing? You getting things accomplished? I keep seeing Facebook posts about nose down, things happening.
I've been dealing with a deadline for the day job and finally got that off my back. So today I dove back into Derelict and tried to get some other stuff done. Also edited a story I wrote 7 years ago called Worship, which is a Garaga story that I'm going to put out for my own Patreon patrons on Halloween. So getting back into that story was kind of crazy and kind of like, yeah, I remember how. Oh, I don't remember putting that. Oh, I don't remember putting that. Oh, I don't remember putting that either. Yeah, much more erotica in that than I thought there was, but it'll still be good.
I can see now. What?
Oh my.
Oh, God.
Yeah, you got to say it in a devil voice. Oh my. You're a nasty person. Nasty. Yeah. So yeah, the usual, trying to finish up Derelict. I should finally get the third draft of Garrus Inferno to me this weekend, so I can start recording next week, which is going to be hell. And then also have to get Derelict done as quickly as possible. I try and like hell to get this thing done by the beginning of November, but just depends on how crazy the day job gets and everything else. But just got to get my head back down into it. So you know how that is, Mr. I have too many deadlines because I bit off more than I could chew.
Curse that hurricane. Curse these guys.
Oh, you're blaming the hurricane. Oh, I
Curse
see how
Little
this
Black
is.
Stray.
Uh-huh.
Which, by the way, Little Black Stray is doing just fine. He's still segregated, but he's much more attentive as far as interacting with me. So he is making the steps necessary, and I've started letting Grace in there every once in a while and watching them interact. And he doesn't know quite how to interact with her, and he'll bop her on the head and bounce around and sniff at her and get all freaked out and go hide. And she's like, "Oh, what? Come back here. I want to love you."
Oh, it's so nice to have a mama cat running around.
She's his age. They're about the same. They're about 2 to 3 years old. So
yeah, but sounds like she's got the mama cat personality.
Not with anyone else. Not at all. Not even close to anywhere else. No. I think this is sibling play thing. She says, "Oh, I like you. You're a male. I kind of want to like you a little bit more." Yeah. I've got a deadline of getting the story that I'm working on with Glenn Stewart done before the 10th of next month. That's a hard deadline when it has to go to the editor. And so I want to get it done sooner than that. So I'm aiming for the very first week of next month, and I'm hustling to make it happen.
So how many words a day do you think you have to write to make that?
If I write every day, I have to write about 3,500 words a day to make that happen. Okay. It's not unsurmountable, but it's definitely requiring a bit more focus, because a good chunk of it right now is stuff that I'm going over things that he's written in the past, because that's what part of the story is.
Right.
And that's actually more time consuming than just writing something fresh.
I can see that. Yeah. I could see how that would be a problem. Well, not a problem. It just adds another layer of difficulty to the project.
It is, but I've got one more chapter to do of going through his stuff again. Then I'm adding a bunch of scenes and some new stuff that's just going to be me. And then I've got about 15,000 words of his to manipulate for the climax of the novel.
Okay.
So it's almost to the point. I've got 10 chapters of my own work to add into there. That's going to speed things up, I think, a little bit, because when I'm in the groove and writing it on my own, that goes a lot faster. It's going to be fun. I am looking forward to the end of this novel, but it's not because I don't enjoy it. It's because I want to see where I'm going to take these interspaced scenes that I'm adding in. I'm not sure what things I'm going to add in, because I've already taken in the first book, in this one, I've taken characters that were throwaway characters and elevated them to have different roles going forward. And I'm kind of curious to see what one of those characters is going to do.
Okay. Well, hopefully you'll make that. I hope so.
I will make it. I will make it.
You say that now.
I do say that now. The commitment has been made. It shall be done.
And if you already got I think you mentioned this before, but what's the next project after this one?
I go back to the Terra book in the Empire series, which I've forgotten what I changed the name to, because it was Battle for Terra. That's not happening, because they're not even going to get to Terra by the time this novel is over, I suspect. So I had to change it. I've forgotten what it is now. Ride for Terra, race to Terra is what I've got it as the working title, but it may not be that either, because it's not that fast. There's no racing here. That might give me some negative. I'm not sure, but I've got almost 50,000 words written in it. So I've got to go back to it and write the last third of the novel. It will only take me another 2 to 3 weeks once I'm done with this project to knock off the other project. Then I'm going to go back and write a post-apocalyptic novel.
Why?
Because I need a palate cleanser. I'm serious. I need to write something that's different than what I've been writing, and writing The Warlord is going to be fun. I had a blast writing Scorched Earth, and I anticipate it's going to be the same here.
I've been thinking more and more that once I finish Derelict, I know I should go back to working on the Black, but I really think I just need to get out of space for a while and go write another my brand of urban fantasy books. Of course, if Garrus Inferno does well, which I doubt it will, that will be more of a reason to write another one of those books. So, but I do think I need to do one, just because palette needs to be cleansed. So
sometimes it must be done.
It must be done. It must be done. Derelict was a palate cleanser for the Black, and now I need to get off this stuff and go deal with some people. You deal with people. I miss dealing with people.
We can't let you deal with people, because we need to go ahead and talk about something totally different today.
Oh, God.
It's pretty much something that requires you to be alone, except for the guy with the leaf blower and the lawnmower. The jet airplane,
washer, the loud car, the barking dogs, the falling apart house. Yeah, let's go.
Your cat's going berserk running through the house.
Yes, my cat's going berserk running through the house. Yes, let's deal with that topic, shall we?
Paul, I've got a question for you.
I might not have an answer.
What are we talking about today? I've already forgotten. We're talking about how you as a creative do your own podcasting. I'm talking from beginning to end, not just putting up, like we talked about before, working with an audio person to do it through ACX and having them do the work. What do you do when you do it all yourself? How do you roll your own? Feel free to lay it out any way you like.
Well, you go get some rolling papers and no. Well, okay. If you're gonna narrate your own audiobooks, you basically need the same kind of equipment you need for a podcast, which is a mic, a decent mic, I hope, pair of decent headphones, GarageBand, Audacity, Reaper, or some other audio recording and editing program. And once you've got all that together, then there's about a billion, bazillion tutorials on how to do this.
Let's start off with that then. What qualifies as a good microphone or a good headset?
I know most of the folks, well, my setup is eclectic to say the least. I've got an AKG Perception 220, which is a professional condenser microphone that was, I don't know, I think $180, you know, God, 9 years ago. Wow, that's terrifying. I've been doing this a long time. I still have the same mic, the same mixer, and the same pair of headphones, and the headphones I've had since 1995.
No, you don't. You're a liar. You, sir, are a liar.
What do you mean I'm a liar?
Because I gave you those headphones like 4 or 5 years ago.
No,
because your other ones went dead.
No, you didn't give me these.
I don't know about that. I can't tell what they are, but I know that I gave you a set because you were complaining that your headphones were dead.
Well, they weren't dead. They're still missing the foam components, but.
So let me get this straight. I gave you a pair of professional grade headphones and they're sitting in a drawer. Is that what you're telling me?
I think that, well, I break them out occasionally. The only problem is now with my with glasses and everything else, it crimps the side. The way those closures are, they crimp the side, and it's going to be worse with my hearing aids. But
okay.
So that's why I'm using the ancient Sony Studios, which I think they still sell. But regardless, as far as the headphones go, or mic goes, I think a lot of folks get away with using the Snowball, which is a very popular USB mic. Doesn't need a mixer. You know, plugs, yeah, like Terry's got right there. There you go.
Looks something like that.
Something like that. So if you get something like that, this decent quality, you should be able to make a decent audiobook. And keep in mind, audiobooks are typically recorded at, or output anyway, at 96 kbps or 64 kbps, like this podcast, which means music is going to sound awful, but spoken sounds okay. At 64, there is a little bit of fidelity loss, but that's why I put my podcast out at 96 and record my audio. I record as high a level as you can, because crunching it down, if you start with really good quality, crunching it down isn't going to affect the quality all that much. So that would be one of the pro tips that I put in there. One
of the benefits of having that loss of fidelity is that everyone doesn't have to hear your voice at the same way normal people do.
What do you mean by that exactly?
Well, that was kind of a vague slam at the way you sound. Except it wasn't so vague.
No, it really wasn't all that vague. You know, basically the hardware side, you can get away. I mean, for crying out loud, for his podcast for the longest time, Jake Bible was getting away with using an Apple mic from like 90 with what did he have? He had like a Barbie, an old Barbie dress or something like that he used as a pop filter.
Wow.
He was low tech.
Oh, Barbie, you're so fine. You're so fine. You blow my mind. Oh, Barbie. Except it's not the right song.
Yeah, it was something like that. I can't remember it, but maybe it was a pair of pantyhose. I don't remember. Pantyhose, whatever. It was really bad. And
well, it's rough when he has to pull out the pantyhose from his personal stash.
Yeah, well, he was going to Fredericks of Hollywood to grab one of their stockings.
Ooh, fancy, high quality pop filters.
Oh yeah, high quality. Fredericks of Hollywood, high quality. Anyway, this is not a conversation about lingerie. So
we're going to mark this down as a conversation for some other podcast.
So, you know, the hardware stuff is, you can go, I mean, how high is up? I mean, really, my setup is, I think, $250, $300 is what I spent on it originally. And I've had it for 8 or 9 years with very few problems. But when I've had problems, they've usually been cords, which wear out. But the bottom line is, if you find something that works, it's going to continue working. unless your environment changes. And that's going to be the next thing we go over with, which is you need to find, and I know a lot of folks out there, and they're all nodding their heads, including Veronica, use basically record in the closet. Yeah. They record in a closet or some other space like that where they can more easily control and deaden sound. It's like, for instance, a closet with a lot of clothes, perfect, because sound is just going to die after it gets to the mic. So you don't want echoes coming back at you. And
another thing to throw out with that is some folks have taken like a plastic milk crate, put a microphone on a stand sticking through the bottom of that, and lined the inside of it with foam so that only the opening is facing towards the person, and record that way, and it eats up the sound as well.
Right. And that's going to be one of those things that's going to be kind of environmentally specific to, where you're planning on recording. The best advice I have is to try several different volumes, even shouting at the microphone, so to speak, and see if it picks up any echoes. And for that, you're going to need a decent pair of headphones. They don't have to be awesome, but a decent set. Earbuds might be able to get by with that, because most people are going to listen over that anyway. And at 64 kbps, it won't matter all that much. But you need to make sure that the quality is good on that side. There's no static. There's no hum, which is a real problem for people who are near leaky electrical equipment. And when I say leaky, I mean that they're emitting a frequency that your microphone is going to pick up.
Your refrigerator
might be one of them. I've had AC units cause that same kind of problem. TVs, ceiling fans, certain monitors, things like that.
Vents.
Yes, I have H vent. I have a ceiling fan in here going 24/7, 365. And I don't think that you can hear any of that crap on my newest stuff. So, because I've got my environment under control.
It doesn't always impact you, but you have to be aware that you need to check for it.
Yes, you do have to be aware that you check for it. When I record, I use feedback. So I mean monitoring. So basically, I'm hearing my voice as the mic hears it. And that means that if there is static on the line, or I get one of those moments where something happens and the computer goes, I hear it immediately, so I don't have to wait till I'm editing and have to take another take later. So it works out really well for me. So those are some other pro tips. So to recap, you got to get the hardware stuff done first. You just kind of have to. If this is something you want to try, you can try it with low setup equipment just to see if it's something you really want to do. And then if you get serious about it, where you want to put stuff on Audible and on ACX or other audio book distributors, God, I can't talk today. Then you're gonna, basically want to try and make sure that you have as high quality as you can get.
You saying that you can't talk today reminds me of the next thing we should talk about. And you say you should try it out to see whether or not it's something you can do, or that that is something you want to do.
Yes.
And I've noticed when I was reading my own work, trying to do stuff, I cannot say a sentence to save my life. And that is the damn truth.
Those of you that are patrons of this show already saw a few, or heard me read some Stephen King, and I slaughtered it. Because I wasn't in the right space, and also the words weren't mine. It takes, and that's a cold read where I have no familiarity with the material whatsoever. The one good thing about an author reading their own work, and this is why I've been doing it for so long, I know how the characters sound in my head. I know how the narrator sounds in my head. So when I go to record the audiobook, I know exactly how those people talk. And that means that I'm not getting a voice actor to try and read my mind. I'm not getting a voice actor and giving them direction, which may or may not make sense. And for me anyway, it's very, very difficult for me to let go of that stuff. At some point, I'm probably going to have to do it just because of a time suck and all the other stuff that goes on with it. But I still really enjoy getting that stuff out there. And I've built an audience around my voice for better or ill. There are people that want to tune in to hear my voice and aren't really pleased when they find out somebody else is narrating the work. So practice reading. I stumble all the time. The rule is 4 to 1. It takes 4 hours to basically put together 1 hour of recorded material.
I think that it's more like 10 to 1 for me.
And actually, I think I've gotten it down to 3 to 1 for the most part. And that's even with mixing and mastering, 3 to 1. But I've been doing this a long time. I've been doing this 9 years.
Audio god.
No, I am not. No, Dan Sawyer is an audio god. I am an audio jack of all trades who can basically sort of get shit where it needs to go. But
You're the journeyman audio dude.
Maybe.
You're the roadie of podcasting.
Yeah, there you go. That's more like it. Yeah, I can pick up a guitar and make a few notes on it, but that's about it. Don't ask me to play solo. So there's a lot of different things that go into this, and one of them is learning how to read. It sounds like the dumbest thing in the world, learning how to read. No, learning how to read aloud, using your voice as an instrument. When we talk to one another, we have these pauses, we have these uhs and ums and those things always happen when you're talking in front of folks, when you're sitting there and talking with your friends, you can't remember how something sounds. You can use that kind of work or those moments in your narration, depending on what the character calls for or anything else. You need to learn how to read the work, which is how did you write it? How does a narrator talk in your mind? Yeah, if you go listen to some Douglas Adams or read some Douglas Adams, for instance, you can tell that narrator is extremely sarcastic. So if I was to do an audiobook reading for Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, I would make damn sure that I put that in there. And it would be a matter of making the narrator dryly sarcastic, not outwardly silly, but basically very matter of fact, and then take the pauses as if even the narrator is kind of surprised at what was said. And things like that, because that kind of stuff really affects people who listen to these audiobooks. And some of it's personal taste. Some people want a straight read, no accents, no crazy inflections, nothing like that, and that's fine. I don't do those. I'm not even sure I'm capable of doing a straight read of my own work.
You're Oscar the Grouch.
I am Oscar the Grouch. What's your point? Meat stick.
Don't got no meat stick points.
There's a lot of fun you can have, but you have to be familiar with your own material, and you have to sit down and figure out exactly how you're going to talk when you're talking as that character, how the narrator is going to speak, how you're going to enunciate certain words, and you have to practice. And there are several times where I have to do 5 or 6 takes because I slaughter one effing word in a sentence. Sometimes in a paragraph.
I've got a blooper reel from something that was recorded years ago.
I've heard it.
With Kimmy Alexander trying to say the same word over and over. It's hysterical. It's hysterical.
That's just mean.
Like I did it on purpose.
It's still just mean. In fact, when I've gone back and used the audio read as my final check, I have actually gone back and changed words in the draft because I realized that if I can't speak it, you probably can't read it. It'll sound wrong.
I don't even know what word it was anymore, but it fit with what it was in writing.
Yeah,
only
in
when
writing.
You tried to mangle it with trying to say it aloud that it killed you. And I didn't change it either.
Yeah, supercilious sibilance can cause some issues there.
If you say so.
If you say so. So those are the things you need to learn how to do, which is to read aloud, to kind of get in touch with your characters and try and figure out what to do. As far as accents go, don't. Unless you're really good at them, don't. Sometimes you've got a character with an accent, and then you have to basically kind of make a decision. Do you leap off the bridge and do a really horrible, mad Scotchman from the 17th century kind of accent? Does it end up sounding more Glaswegian or Russian than Scottish? Those are things that you kind of have to figure out if you're going to do them. And if you really want to do them, that's great and wonderful. Just be careful. And depending on the writing, you might actually do a bad accent and make it work because of the way the character is.
Sometimes the accent doesn't matter. Just ask Scott Sigler about women.
Oh, God. Oh, no. Let's get right. All right. So
I should say about female voices rather
than
women.
Female voices, yes.
Yeah.
Female voices. Female voices are...
Hearing Scott Sigler try to do a female voice is just... It's something you have to experience for yourself.
I'm not sure mine are much better, but I get accolades for mine being better. I don't know why.
You don't have to stretch very far to reach that goal.
Well, this is true. There's... if you're male, you have to really decide if you want to go the female voice. And the best thing I can say is that try not to go squirrely with it, unless you're purposely trying to go squirrely with it.
And don't try too hard to make it sound female, because you'll end up making it sound effeminate and come across as perhaps a gay man as opposed to a female.
Maybe.
Don't try too hard.
Terry, I really think we should go out on a date together.
After the way you put your hands all over me last time, that ain't happening.
You can soften your voice up by how you do the intonation, what parts of your voice you try and leave out if you're trying to go in a higher register. Again, it doesn't have to be really high. Sometimes I go an octave further than I should, and that's on purpose. Carbonaro in Derelict, for instance, she's got a really high voice, and it doesn't fit with the character at all, which is why I do it, because it's funny. Because she is a bitch, and she is rough and tumble, wants to punch the guys in the nuts after, an exercise or something like that. She is just, macho, if you're going to put it in today's stereotypes, but she's not like that. I mean, her voice just doesn't fit her attitude.
So what you're saying is that her voice fit to her body, and her behavior is like how Mike Tyson really sounds.
There you go. It's one of those things where you hear the voice and you're like, how the hell is that coming out of that person?
I was sure that when I heard Mike Tyson the first time, it was in some movie that he was had a spot in. And I was like, he's making that shit up. That's not him.
No, he sounds like Michael Jackson.
He really does sound that way.
You know what he sounds like? He sounds like a Muppet.
My name's Mike Tyson.
So after I beat the shit out of the guy and everything else,
I'm going to chew your ears off.
Yeah, exactly. Something like that. So again, try the voices, try and get comfortable with them. And the best thing you could possibly do to learn how to do all this, listen to audiobooks. Listen to podcast novels or short stories or whatever by people who do this kind of work professionally. And they all do it differently. Trust me, there are no two folks who will read the same material the same way. It just doesn't happen that way. If you go up on ACX and you put a script out for potential narrators to try out, you are going to get 15 different readings, completely different takes. Some are going to always, and there are occasionally somebody who will annoy the shit out of me as an audiobook consumer, because they will put an uplift, for instance, on the last word. So it always sounds like a question, even when it's not a question. And there are others who don't take enough pauses. There are others who take too many pauses, who confuse the listener by getting them to think that maybe the paragraph's done when it's really not. You can be overly dramatic. You can be under dramatic. There's all these things you kind of have to learn. And part of that is listening to folks who do it well. In other words, not me.
Another thing you can do is audiobook narrators do find places on Facebook and other places to hang out.
Yes.
You can find a community of professionals and get help there too.
And I think we have some of those links, and we'll post them in the show notes, because I know we've done this before, and I think I may actually be on one of those Facebook groups.
I got approved to be in one, so yeah, they'll let anybody in, apparently.
So once you get all of that together, I mean, basically you just kind of have to listen to your voice. And most people, when they first hear their recorded voice coming back at them, hate it. And it sounds weird. It sounds bizarre. It sounds just like shit. I've been doing this for 9 years. I still hate the way I sound. And my voice kind of changes depending on what day of the week it is, it seems like. But once I get on a roll, once everything's warmed up, then it kind of settles into its normal, you know, my baritone register when I'm reading or whatever I'm doing. So there is kind of a stage voice presence to that. And you get used to figuring out how that all works. It just takes time. It takes time. It takes practice.
If you want to know how you sound, ask someone else.
That's going to be another part of this, is basically once you get all this done, hand it over to somebody and let them listen and see if you know what their opinion is, and go for an honest opinion. I mean, if you're starting out, you're going to need some honest feedback, and some of it's going to be horrible.
You suck.
Yeah, you suck. And of course, there are some people who just do not have voices for doing this. I mean, period, in the story. Their voices just do not work for doing audio narration. It may be because of the timbre, it may be because of the pitch, or maybe that there's some other mechanical problem with their mouths or their palates or whatever else that keep them from being able to enunciate properly, which is very, very important. You can't really do mush mouth too much on this kind of stuff because people won't understand the words, and that's going to be a problem. So you have to kind of figure out the enunciation. We take a lot of shortcuts. American English speakers are horrible at actually enunciating. It is just ridiculous. So there are things that you kind of have to think about. Not everybody can do this. I think everybody should try it, but I don't think everybody can do it. But I think it's very important for authors to read their work aloud. And especially if you get to the point where you do book signings and things like that, all of this is practice. All of it's practice. And if you can hear what you're doing wrong and hear what you're doing right, when you go back and listen to it, then you'll get a better idea of how to actually speak when you're doing book signings or book reading. You'll get up there and be able to, you know, knock it out of the park instead of stumbling over the words and not inflecting properly where you need to and not enunciating. And I've been to some of those readings where the author obviously hadn't practiced reading aloud, or they were just that bad at it. But you kind of have to get better at it, and that's a completely different conversation altogether. Let's see, what else do I have here? Like I said, narrator, choosing the voice. I mean, Terry's books have a very, for the most part, laid back narrator.
That's because Veronica's very laid back, and she enunciates a lot better than I do.
I'm not talking about the audiobooks, dude. I'm talking about how the words are written on the page.
That's true. That's true.
Your narrator doesn't tend to be sarcastic. Your narrator only occasionally throws in an opinion. And then usually it's very, very clipped and not much of one.
I try to make that opinion the character's opinion.
Yes.
I try not to actually give the narrator a voice at all.
Right. But there are things like we do, like in Outbreak, you know, he wondered if you know, he'd be able to keep his patients alive, and then the narrator puts in there, he wouldn't. Something like that.
I don't do that.
Yes, you do.
I do not.
You absolutely do.
Send me a snippet because I don't believe it.
You admitted it the last time we talked about this, that you had done this before.
I don't know.
Oh my God. I can't count on you.
Not just like that, I haven't.
Oh God. Anyway, maybe not just like that, but you've done it.
I try not to actually foreshadow future events and say how something is going to turn out. I try to stay in the moment.
Right. I understand that. But occasionally,
whereas saying he wouldn't be able to, maybe I'll write something like, and that plan went to shit. It's still in the present. That's an example, but it's still in the present. I try not to exceed and forecast into the future.
Fine, whatever. You've done it before.
It's a real difference.
No, it's really not. I mean, that all depends on what you're writing and how you're writing it. I did that on purpose because I was doing it for the podcast. I wanted to end that episode there, and I wanted to be a complete and total cliffhanger and son of a bitch. And the other thing is, you put that in there. Oh God, we've moved on from audiobooks to writing. You put some of that stuff in there in certain places. Don't overdo it, and only when you're foreshadowing something that's going to happen several scenes down the line. And the reason you put that there is basically a mark to let the reader know, hey, remember this shit? And it sticks in their heads. And sometimes it's just fun to fuck with the reader.
Because you're a right bastard.
I am a right bastard. Jason Gregory Banks said so. Those are those moments where you look at that as a writer and you think, how would this be read aloud? How would the narrator, say these kinds of things? And, go listen to a variety of narrations. Sigler does something different than, say, a J.C. Hutchins, than, say, a Phil Rossi, than a Paulie Cooley, than a Scott Roach, than a Jake Bible or a Jean Miro. We all have, or Veronica Giguere, we all have a different way that we speak. We all have a different way that we write. And my stories have different narrators. Depending on which series it is, the narrator will have a different voice. And that's just kind of the way it is. But when you're recording, you need to decide if that's something that you want to tackle. But, you can't make it monotonic. If you make it monotonic, you're going to put people to sleep, no matter how exciting the material is.
Bueller.
Yeah, no Ben Steins, please, unless you're trying to go for Ben Stein.
Don't try to go for Ben Stein.
No, if you go for Ben Stein with a character saying their dialogue, that's one thing. That could be funny as hell.
That's true. Especially
if another character is just talking really fast.
Don't let your narrator be Ben Stein.
Yeah, don't let your narrator be Ben Stein unless you're going for that particular effect, and I hope the story is very short. So there are some things that you need to think about if you're going to do this. And the narration just takes time. It takes, every time that I start a new audiobook, it takes me a while to get into the groove. It's really difficult. And sometimes I will go through and I will read that chapter before I record it. And sometimes I'll just be like, hey, I'm good, I'm badass, I can go do this. And then I end up with 15 different takes. So you just kind of have to get used to it. Not every day. I'm sure Veronica can vouch for this. Not every day goes as smoothly as every other day.
I feel confident that this is true.
Yeah. So let's now we covered that.
So what's your recording process actually like? Do you have anything you set up? Any peculiarities that you have to do certain things in certain ways to prepare yourself? Got to get that candle lit over here. You got to do whatever it is, whatever superstitious little nonsense you've got to do to get yourself all in the right frame of mind.
I always make sure I have a hydration nearby.
Scotch?
No, preferably water. I only drank scotch while I was doing the street. It's only because it's the only thing that helped me get through it.
That's rough.
No, well, I mean, doing Oscar's voice for hours on end is just, it will rip you up. If you try to talk like this for an hour and a half, see how you like it.
Yeah, that would tear you up. I hear that something like honey tea might help.
Honey tea, usually anything warm or hot. I wouldn't recommend coffee necessarily, but I do that. Hot tea is good. The other thing that all the voice actors I know swear by is pineapple juice. It supposedly has some kind of acidic consistency or whatever that's really good for the vocal cord, or not the vocal cords, the esophagus, trachea, and all that crap in your mouth and everything else. It does something to it. They make lots of throat sprays for that too, but And don't record when you're sick.
If you're already recording a book and you have a day where your voice is radically different because you've got a cold or something else, take a break.
Take a break. If you listen to enough audiobooks, you will notice these splices about 60 to 90 seconds. And it's not in every audiobook, but you can tell that they started a different recording session.
Mm-hmm.
And you can tell it wasn't immediately after this one.
And you can sometimes have no difficulty at all in knowing because the quality or the tone is just sounds completely different.
Radically different. And it'll be that way for about a minute before your brain just basically forgets what you were listening to before and is now centered on this.
Or it's just patched in and you have 30 seconds of it and then you go back to what was there before.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
I think T. Morris's Moravia?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's Moravia.
The
The first one he did, I think it was Moravia. He put out a quality controlled version a few years later that had, I think it had more material in it. Oh boy. The quality was so different between the old recording and the new recording splices, I couldn't even listen to it because it was so distracting. There are things I wouldn't do. That's not a comment on the writing, it's a comment on the fact that when he was recording, I think he may have lost even the source recordings and was going from the old stuff. So that's another bad way to do it. T's really good at what he does. Don't get me wrong, really good at what he does. But this was way, way back in the day. I shudder when I go back and I listen to my original podcast. So, Terry's going to his bookshelf. This can't be good. Terry, what? He can't hear me either because he doesn't have his headphones on. Aha. He's showing up his original copy of Moravia.
I do actually have a few.
I've noticed that. So there are those
Moravia,
things.
the Chronicles of Rafe and Ascana.
There you go. Another thing I would do to try and avoid that is also listen to what you sounded like before. And then see if you can try and get back into that groove, back into that headspace. But
one thing that if you're doing different voices, that I know Veronica does this, she'll record a sample for each character and have it as a reference that she can go back to refresh her memory about how a certain character sounds. When you're doing a 7-book series, that's very useful.
Yes, and I had to do that with Derelict. I've had to do that with Derelict. And when I get back to the Black, when I finish Evolution, I'll have to do that too, for the characters that are going to live through it anyway.
Kill them all.
You know what? You know one way to end this series? What's that? Kill everybody.
Even the narrator is dead.
Even the narrator is dead.
The last 20 pages of this book are blank.
It's just tombstones everywhere. This book intentionally left blank.
These pages blank because all characters dead.
Yeah, it's not quite going to work that way. But, So, yes, that's another issue that you've got to deal with. I'm sure Veronica will be more than happy to add tons more paragraphs to this particular post when we put it up there in the Facebook group. But
I think you're going to have to end your book with just the computer voice going, well, that could have gone better.
Yes, and our Black saying that, yeah, that'd work. All right, so we're going to cover 2 more topics real quick.
Okay.
Music.
Or sound effects?
We'll get to that next.
Oh, that's the other topic. Okay.
All right, music. Terry, you listen to audiobooks. How much music is there?
None.
None. Is there music at the beginning?
Only in some of the older works. The people that I know that are still doing these have stopped doing that.
What about the end?
Usually not.
Okay. Paul E. Cooley puts music at the front and music at the end.
It's because he's different.
And when Paul E. Cooley is putting together a shadowpublications.com audiobook, there's usually music whenever there's something like an AI thinking, or we're getting a view of the ship from none of the characters, or we're getting a view of the ocean from a lanternfish. I will put creepy music in the background or whatever else needs to go there, and people love it. But I don't put it on the Audible versions, because the folks who buy audiobooks from Audible, by and large, don't want that shit. All they want, and they don't even want transitions. They want plain old silence between chapters.
Yep.
2 or 3 seconds of silence between chapters. In fact, Audible recommends that. Those of us who grew up with the podcast fiction stuff, man, with transitions everywhere, we had music everywhere and everything else, because we were doing, this presentation production stuff. And we wanted to have you in the palms of our hands for 15 to 20 minutes. And that's how we did things. Plus, it was basically, it's okay. It's standard intro. It lasts 45 to 60 seconds. Everybody knows that. It's just the precursor to, the babble and then the episode. And then at the end, you'll have the music. That's how I roll. And that's how I've always rolled. And I don't think I'll be changing that anytime in the near future.
When we first started doing this, or back when I first became aware of this and thought about doing my own work as podcast versions, I went ahead and went out and bought a bunch of royalties-free music that I could use, and sound effects too from the same place. And they don't actually sell them that way anymore, but I've got a ton of them and then never did anything with it. Go figure.
Suck.
It's because I discovered I had different priorities of where I wanted to spend my time. It doesn't make it right or wrong. It's just I decided that I didn't want to incorporate the amount of time. That 10-to-1 ratio is what it felt like, that I felt that I could be better off writing.
Yeah, it just depends on what you're doing and how much you're doing it. But, I like right now, okay, we're on episode 17 of Derelict, I think. Episode 17 of Tomb, and I think there's another 17 to go, roughly. I have not recorded a single line of fiction in probably 20 months. Because I got it all done then. So basically for the podcast, all I do is I do some babble and splice things together just like I do for this show, and then it's up there.
Once you shit it up there. That's the shit noise you just made.
Shut up. I'll upload it up there, and then y'all will download it and listen to it, hopefully. Or, if you can't stand looking at us, just throw it in the trash, whatever. Listening, looking, whatever. Regardless, all that work is done way ahead of time before I put an audiobook out. Don't ever put an audiobook out unless it's finished. ACX will get very grumpy with you if you try and do that. So don't do it. You can upload each episode, but don't or each chapter, however you're doing it, but don't do that till the book's done. That's my advice. So transitions, I wouldn't include them if you're doing a pro audiobook for ACX or somebody like that. I would not put in transitions. Transitions are usually the pieces that separate those 5 bullet breaks between sub-chapters or chapters. Don't put them in there. That's a podcast thing. Don't do it. And let's go for special effects. Terry, how many audiobooks have you listened to that have special effects?
From Audible? None.
Really? None?
Maybe it's just because I haven't listened to enough, but none. Okay.
I don't know for sure. I'll have to go back and look, but I don't think I think when Sigler started, when he put the stuff up there on Audible, I think it had the special effects, and some of his stuff you kind of had to do that to get a feel, but that was mainly the GFL. I use special effects in the shadowpublications.com version of the audiobooks, because essentially it's the podcast. Those people want that. If they don't want that, and I tell them that up front, go to Audible. So I sell the special super edition, whatever, with all the music, sound effects, and transitions. I sell that separately from what I put up on Audible.
Different audience.
It's a different audience. Now, granted, I think it makes a much better presentation when you can hear, like with Derelict, where you've got one character who you're in their head, and everybody around them is on the radio, and so it makes it really easy to see or tell who's who and what's going on. And even using like some digital processing on a computer voice or something like that, it works. It just works. But I wouldn't do it for Audible. I wouldn't do it for ACX because, like Terry said, different audience. Those folks tend to get grumpy. So you have to make sure that when you do those special effects, that you're not planning on it needs to work without them. I mean, if you put them in there, that's just extra texture and everything else, and you know, some of your other listeners may really love it, but in general, the Audible crowd kind of killjoy on that kind of stuff. I don't know why, but they are.
I have no idea why they're so hardcore on music and sound effects with that audience, but it's been around a lot longer. We're talking books on tape kind of people that have transitioned into this, so they've had a long time to get set in their ways.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. But I mean, even when I was listening to books on tape, they would do these kinds of things. It's just that the market somehow changed. I don't know exactly what drove it, but it did change in some way. So there is a difference between what I do for ACX or through, you know, for another audiobook distributor versus what I do for my podcast or for shadowpublications.com. It's just a different animal altogether. So.
And the place that I got my royalty-free music and sound effects from was a place called Digital Juice, which they were very common back in that day.
And my special effects are courtesy of stuff on freesound.org or the sound effects that came with GarageBand and Logic Pro. So I don't buy sound effects, and if I need music, I either use those or I go to 2 albums by 9 Inch Nails that are under a Creative Commons license. Or I do what you should do and go look at Kevin MacLeod's wonderful compendium of 1 billion royalty-free songs at incompetech.com. Because he makes scores for everything. That's part of what he does, and so he does stuff for video games, movies, whatever. In fact, you've probably heard I guarantee you've heard his music. I guarantee it. If you watch any independent movies, you have definitely heard his music at some point. So those are the considerations. There's not just the narration, but then there's how you package it. There's what do you do for a cover. There's just all these different pieces, and it's really going to depend on what your style is and exactly what kind of identity you're trying to build out. So. There's no one right answer. I'm sure if Veronica got in here and tried to give you the same information, she would remember 10 things I didn't tell you and then take issue with at least 10 things I did.
Yes, but she's got a lot more experience at doing audio than we do. Even you.
Even me?
Even you.
Even me? Yeah, she does, actually.
I read somewhere that she's done in excess of 100 projects at this point, so she's definitely got a lot more than I do.
I don't know. She's probably done as many projects as Jake Bible has books.
No, I don't know about that. No.
Yeah, 5 minutes ago, he just finished another one. And
he heads to the can, he writes a book.
Yeah, pretty much.
Then he sits there and goes, "This book is for shit." You think it was funny, admit it.
I just not even gonna. I'm just gonna. I'm just not gonna respond to this at all.
Anybody watching on YouTube knows exactly how you responded. So there.
Yeah. So anyway, those are the basics. If you want to decide to get into this, but really, if you're going to be an author, I think it's important to know how to read your work. I think it just is. And I think if you do try reading it aloud, and we've talked about this a bazillion times in this show, if you do read it aloud, you will discover things about the prose you otherwise would not have realized. And because you read it without tripping up doesn't mean that somebody else isn't going to be tripped up by those words and the way you put them together. So sometimes it really does help to listen to how it sounds aloud. I mean, sometimes you can write a piece of dialogue. It looks perfectly right on the page, but if you try to really speak it, no human being would talk like that. So you kind of have to do these things, depending on how much work you want to put into it on your writing. This kind of thing does help. It helps me a lot. Your mileage may vary, obviously, as always, and depending on your experience level and all that other garbage. But I do think it is something that's very important.
That brings us to the next subject, and that's putting it all together. You've recorded your novel. You've probably got about 500 different files and segments of files and screw ups in the file. How do you get it all together and quality check it?
Well, that's when you bring out the bottle of scotch.
Editing is the most time-consuming part, except for talking.
Except for talking. The way that I do my edits is that if I have a single contiguous chapter, I put it in one file. I record that entire chapter. I save it off, and then I go and edit it. And I do it right then, because right then is when I know when I screwed up. I use a clicker to mark where I've got a bad take or something like that. So when I look at the waveforms, I can just immediately tell more than half the time what to cut out and where to drag over. But
that's every paragraph for me.
But you have to go back and you have to listen to make sure you got it right as far as the editing goes. You may not have put a long enough pause between sentences. You may have a section that's got too long of a pause because of the way you've edited.
Or you left the paragraph out.
You may, and you may really fuck up, like somebody who works at shadowpublications.com, and actually end up dragging on top of an entire chapter. In other words, that chapter ends up being 5 minutes long because you erased the rest of it. Not a good thing. So there are little quality control things you pick up here and there. If I have a chapter with multiple parts, I will record each part in its own file. So if chapter 27, for instance, has 3 different parts in it, what I'm calling by parts is, this one's from Dickerson's point of view, and then 5 dots, dot, 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 or asterisks, whatever. And then we start the next section that's in Callie Moore, and then we go back to Dickerson, but it's all in the same chapter. That will be chapter, say, 27-1, -2, and -3. Different files.
Here's something that will save your ass. Never work in your original file. Never, ever, ever work in your original file. Save your stuff to the side, make a copy, and do your editing in your copy so that you don't destroy your original inadvertently.
Oh, yeah. Says the man who's working off the compiled copy that has been edited, never going back and putting it back into his source file, but never mind that.
Don't do what Paul says.
Don't do what Terry says either.
Don't do what Paul does.
What I try and do now is I record, and then I'll cut that out to a high quality AIFF or WAV file, and then I'll import it into a new piece for mastering. So I have the original file. But this chews up a lot of drive space. But I record at a ridiculously high quality setting, 320 kbps. So it's ridiculous. My files end up being like 1 gigabyte, 2 gigabytes. So
Redonkulous.
Huh?
Redonkulous.
Redonkulous. And yeah, because I'm anal about that kind of stuff. So there are pieces that go together with that. You have to be kind of careful, and you have to kind of get in a groove. And I would say the best thing to do is, rather than record a novel to start off with, go record a short story to get the process down. It doesn't have to be yours. Go pick up a short story that one of your favorite short stories or something like that, and go narrate it. Don't even narrate your own work. Go narrate that and listen to how that sounds before you narrate your own work, and then go through the process of editing and cutting it together and see if you come out with something good. Just try it. Might work for you. And then do the same thing for your stuff. You have to do it to learn it. You can't learn it just by reading a book about it. Dan Sawyer has an excellent book on this entire subject, and I can't even remember what it's called now. We'll put the link in the show notes, I promise. But it seems like Dan Sawyer's written a book on every subject at this point.
Well, yeah.
But this kind of stuff really does help you get along and how you're going to do these things. And you may decide that, hell, I don't want to go through this pain and suffering. That's fine. That's why when you're ready for that, you hand it over to somebody like Jean Miro or Veronica Giguere or whomever.
Making tracks.
Making tracks. There we go. Yeah, making tracks. And Dan and I have a big, brouhaha disagreement over condenser mics versus directional mics.
That's like an inside baseball sort of thing.
Yeah, you kind of have to be in the biz, but he does a completely different kind of recording than I do. And I found something that works for me, so I'm sure shit not going to change it. As long as it's working, I ain't changing shit. My mixer settings, I actually have photographs of where the dials are, because in case the cat knocks them around, because I don't want to have to go through the torture and pain of figuring that. You laugh, but Shadow walks on my goddamn mixing board all the time. He's muted me before during recording, where suddenly I realized that there's nothing coming through the mic because the son of a bitch walked on it and hit the mute button. Yeah, little fucker. Anyway, so there's things that you're gonna have to do. You have to get the process down. It's just like any other thing. You have to learn exactly what the tricks are, but the only way to do that is to brute force your way through it and figure it out. This is kind of a dumb way of doing it, but it works. How can I smarten this up a little bit? But
and also, once you do one of these short stories for yourself, you can sit down and say, okay, let me make a note of things where I had problems, things I have questions about. Then you have a little bit of foreknowledge of what you're going through to ask other people how these problems might be solved.
Right. Yeah, that does kind of help. If you're going to go to a group, it's kind of helpful to put that stuff up there. Plus, if you have a slice of bad audio where you've got a hum or something you can't get out, you could always post it to one of those groups and say, hey, what am I doing wrong? And somebody like Dan Sawyer or Paulie Cooley, but I doubt it because he's an idiot, will have some idea of how you can get rid of that sound in the background. But you know what I can help you with? I cannot help you with lawn folks outside using their leaf blowers and lawnmowers. I can't help you with the garbage trucks backing up going beep, beep, beep. I can't help you with sounds of construction going on.
Is that a jet fighter?
Is that a jet fighter? Several times during a recording session, I have to just basically stop because a plane has decided to fly over my house. Or the train. If it's a really, really clear, dry night where there's no humidity, there is a train where you can hear it, and it is miles and miles away. But on certain nights, like tonight, for instance, the sound will carry. It will really carry, and it will show up on your mic. You might not think it does. It does. Just kind of have to turn it up loud, but it's there, and it's enough to drive me nuts. So, recording times. Figure out when those recording times are. When your pets are docile, your children are asleep, and your significant other doesn't have the radio or TV at volume 11.
When is that again? Never?
So you have to try and figure out when the best times to record are. And there have been times for certain audiobooks where I've started recording at 10 p.m. and then finish a recording session at 1 a.m. It just kind of depends on how bad things are going around you. It also depends on the schedule, which you can do. You can record early in the morning before people get started, or late at night, or in the afternoon. It just depends. Saturdays are always bad because everybody's mowing their damn lawn. Actually, every morning is bad because the lawn folks, for all the people who don't, do their own lawn work, are out there just roaring around.
It's where Paul shows up in his yard in his bathrobe going, really? Really?
With a shotgun in my hands. Will you shut up? I'm trying to record here so I can pay my bills. Yeah, so there are these little things that you kind of have to be aware of. So if you're not familiar with your recording environment, if you're trying to get it down, record little 5-minute snips, and don't plan on using them for shit. They're just there for QC. They're just there for quality control, for you to dial in your settings, for you to dial in the noise of your room, for you to dial in those particular little idiosyncrasies of your environment, and then figure out how to deal with them. So those are some of the biggest problems. But first, learn how to read.
That's the thing I never got past.
It's because you didn't try hard enough, because you gave up.
I start talking and blah, 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 blah. My mouth. Yeah.
And how long have we been doing this talk show?
I think the way I can do this talk show better is because I don't actually think. I just turn my brain off, and words just fall out of my mouth.
We've noticed, and this is why it says Paul's punching bag in your banner. I just noticed that. You're such a whiny little.
Oh man, I put that there hours ago.
Hours ago, my ass.
I had it in there since the very beginning. If you look back when we were doing the pre-show, it was there then.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Was it there then?
Yes, it was.
Holy crap, because I changed mine. Anyway, well, the intro's not going to match this anyway. Who cares?
No, but I'm just saying that I had it in mind to put there, all the way through.
I must not have noticed because I just didn't give a shit. Anyway,
that happens to me a lot.
I love my Terry. I almost said like syphilis.
It kind of looked like it too.
There are thousands of resources out there to help you do this. If you go up to acx.com, they've got a whole pamphlet, booklet, online bazillion bullshit about how to record, what they expect, their quality settings, and yes, they are torturous at some points, and how they want things. But the bottom line is learn how to read, then learn how to record, then learn how to edit. And those are the three pieces. But if you just go through the reading aloud stage and decide, then you can just write off the rest of this. Not get started too.
Don't buy your expensive equipment and software if you're not going to actually do it.
Yeah, and I was only sure that I was going to do it when I tried recording on the computer using a shitty microphone on the laptop and everything else, and decided that yes, I could do this, but I could not do it out the equipment I had. That's when the wife was like, so how much is it going to cost for you to start doing this for real? It's like, okay, all right, well, you spent the money. That was way back then. So you buy good equipment, it lasts for a long time. Long time.
God, I think I've had this Snowball microphone for 10 years, something like that. I had it when I started doing the podcast.
Yeah, so it's been at least 9. Yeah.
Good equipment will last. And the Snowball was not that expensive. It was only 100 and some odd bucks. Yeah. Maybe it was less than that. Not sure. Yeah.
So the AKG 220 Perception was, I think, 140 or 150. I don't remember. And I got a mixing board that's way larger than I needed. Way too much power for what I do, but I have it. So there's 1,000 different things, and like I said, how high is up? You can spend $1 bazillion on all your equipment and still suck.
Shoot, I paid way more than this. It's down apparently to 50 and 60 bucks.
Yeah.
So yeah,
time makes a big difference, doesn't it?
Time makes a hell of a difference. Apparently,
you don't even have the blue Snowball.
No, I've got the original white, which on Amazon is 69 bucks. I think I paid maybe twice that when I bought it.
Strange how that happens.
It's lasted me this long, so over time, your equipment costs will pay for themselves if you get something that's quality.
Oh yeah, so I mean, this gear paid itself off first time I sold audiobooks. Actually, with if you count podcast listeners as readers, it paid off damn near instantly. And I think it was one of the best investments I ever made. So any other questions, Terry? Now that you've let me pontificate for an hour.
I think that's a great primer on exactly what you need to be thinking about when you're going to be doing your own work. You're not going to know what other questions you have until you've dipped your toe in the water and tried.
Yeah. That's true. Until you try it, you have no idea what to ask. It's like anything else, really. But again, practice.
Yeah.
Just practice.
Do not go on one of these forums and ask a professional how you're doing something if you haven't at least tried to do something yourself.
Yeah.
Take a swing at it first.
Take several swings at it. First off, learn how to read. Yeah, there's just a lot of things that go into it, and don't panic. That's the other thing. Don't panic. So practice. The first podcasts I made, they didn't make it out in the world. They did, but they didn't. I didn't start advertising my podcast until I relaunched it a year after it had already been running, because it took me that long to get comfortable with my work and reading aloud and doing everything that I did until I was. It took that long before I was comfortable basically letting the world know I was doing this. Before that, I only had like 30 or 40 people listening who were, folks that knew me. So it helps. It helps to do that. It just does. And it's a commitment. This is all a commitment. But for me, it's been worthwhile because I keep all the royalties from my audiobooks, and I can do anything I want with them. I don't have to worry about contracts or agreements with other voice actors or actresses, whatever. I have total control over my own words, and it's wonderful. Sometimes.
There you go. Well, folks, if you have some questions for Paul about this, I don't consider myself an expert on this one. Send us a note at show@deadrobotsociety.com, or you can find him on Twitter at Paul_E_Cooley. Best of all, go to Facebook, find us at the Listeners of the Dead Robot Society Facebook group. And if you want to support this podcast, well, I should say you can also find us on YouTube at youtube.com/DRS podcast. If you want to support the podcast as a patron, you can go to patreon.com/DRS podcast. Did I get everybody?
Yes, you did.
I did. And of course, the audio is being stored by the good folks at podhoster.com, who keep the audio of all 500 almost episodes for your
zillion episodes
torture. We can't leave without thanking our $10 patrons. What have they put there to stumble you up today?
Oh, this is going to be fun. So, as of this moment, our $10 patrons are Robert Slade, Caleb, Don't Eat the Special Sauce James, Nathan, when is Sanderson coming on the show, Petty? Drew, Sex Robot Sales Bernardi. See last week's episode for that joke. John Kilgallen, Chris Winder, Isabel Cushy, Andre Conde Moraes, DJ Chamberlain, Jonathan Zarusin, JR, finished the next Empire of Bones book, Terry Handley.
Damn true.
And Sue, just keep writing Bayman. There. That's them.
Well, Paul, thanks for coming on and explaining the process to us.
I didn't explain anything.
You may not think so, but you did indeed.
Oh, I'm so happy for you.
I was just saying that to make you feel better.
Yeah, I know. Kind of like all the folks who tell me they enjoy hearing me talk.
You realize those are all just aliases for your mom, right?
Yeah, exactly. My mom's got 14,000 Audible accounts. She really wants to make elevate my self-esteem.
That should be a plot point in some future book.
The mom bot.
Somebody like Anonymous creates 10 billion accounts. They all go out and they buy this one guy's book. He becomes an overnight sensation, puts out book 2, and no one buys it at all because there was a fake account thing.
That sounds like something the Sick or Dead Puppies would do.
The Sick or Dead Puppies.
Whatever that group was for the Hugos. There were 2 of them. Both
it was
puppies.
The Sad Puppies.
Sad Puppies and the Sick Puppies, right? Sick
Angry Puppies? I want to say Angry Puppies, but I'm not sure. Sad and angry. What can you say?
It is what it is.
It is what it is. Well, Paul, thanks for joining us. As usual.
As usual.
Listeners, thank you very much for taking the time to check us out, and we really appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye.